Welcome everyone, I'm Ben Hansen, a UAP researcher and TV host. Now, as most of you know, the acronym UAP stands for Unidentified Aerial Phenomena. And what I'm about to show you is exactly that. So sit back and buckle up because I have a very strange case for you today. Now, over the past several weeks, we've been working on releasing a video that follows up on the racetrack UAPs that we've been reporting on. We will soon put out a video that is going to highlight some of what we're calling outlier events that don't quite fit the satellite theory that we believe does explain most of these similar sightings. But unexpectedly, a week or two ago, another case basically fell into my lap, and I just couldn't set it aside. This took place on December 1st in a very rural area of Wisconsin, okay, near West Bend and Fredonia. You see there on your map. And for now, I'm calling this the Firefly UAP event, and you're going to see why in a minute. As always, for those who are just too impatient to hear the backstory, you can fast forward to the time marker that you see on the screen below, and you can go right to where we start to introduce the videos. Also, I want to remind you that this is a developing story. Undoubtedly, we're going to receive new information as leads develop. So we're going to update, refine theories, put that information out as it becomes available. But we want to enlist everyone's help on this one. We want to see if we can all work together to try and identify these lights. If they have a natural or a human-made explanation, I think you're going to find that the witnesses in this case, they're all committed to it. Everybody just wants the truth of what happened, no matter where the facts lead. So just to give you an idea of how involved this has become, we have upwards of, I'd say, maybe a dozen or so people who are spending countless hours chasing down these leads. This includes an ATC radar controller, airport staff, police officers, firefighters. We have several witnesses in the area that are also doing the groundwork. So I think you're going to see how incredibly unusual these UAPs are, and then you're going to understand why nobody wants to stop searching until we positively identify what is creating or controlling them, or until we've exhausted every reasonable effort. All right, so I want to jump right into this, and to do so, I want to introduce my research partner, Brittany Barbieri. I really can't thank her enough for agreeing to join me on these investigations because we can cover so much more ground than me doing it solo. On this case, by far, she's done more of the legwork, talking to the leads, getting the expert opinions, drawing up maps, etc. So let's bring her on and have her tee this up. Brittany, how are you?
I'm good. Working hard.
Have you gotten any sleep like me?
No,
I mean,
of
not
course
like me.
not.
No, yeah, no.
No, I haven't. You know how this business goes.
This has been so crazy. So our email boxes are, crammed full today. You've been on the phone a ton, talking with everybody from city halls to, we're getting information from air traffic controllers. We got police and fire, like I said, looking into this. So why don't we start out by telling people the first witness is Kim. Now this is December 1st. It's about 10:47 or so, and she's driving with her husband. Right?
Right.
So walk us through exactly what she told you, and let's set up the video that people are going to see.
Okay, so basically it was late at night. They had been in town, which is West Bend, Wisconsin. They had been in town having dinner, and then we're heading back. And basically they were heading on the back roads. They don't live far from downtown, about a mile or so. And at first, she was driving the car. Her husband was in the passenger seat. And at first, they had kind of seen a bright light kind of flash in front of the car. And her first initial response was, oh, it was an owl, because out in the farmlands. Now, again, they're like in the middle of nowhere. Like, it's very remote, a lot of farming, a lot of crops, a lot of wheat farms, cattle farms, etc. And so you do get a lot of barn owls, and they're very large. And when they do go across your beam of lights, it looks like a giant big white ball that gets thrown in front of your car.
Right. Or a great horned owl, or a snowy white owl, which is my favorite.
Any of those. Yes, any of those would do. Or a Harry Potter owl. Anyway, so basically, she saw that and they were both like, oh my goodness. And then it happened again. And then she was a little bit more on alert, and so was her husband. Like, that was really weird. Was that a second owl? I don't know. And then when they looked up, they noticed these lights that were right about tree level in the sky. And one at a time, they were coming down from tree level into where their car beam lights would be, come down to the road there, and then jump back out and go onto the left side of where would be the driver's side over on that tree level side and shooting up back into the sky. That happened 4 times. And she finally was like, I'm pulling off the road. What are these lights? And when she did, that's when she stopped and filmed the footage that you and I saw and reviewed. And then the very end, it stopped and it went away. And they
So
shot off.
crazy, so
Yeah.
crazy. So it's really important that people understand that there were objects seen by this couple that came down from what appears to be like clouds, the horizon, and they're in front of their car, right?
Yeah.
They're in
In
front of their
front of their
beam,
car in the road. Yep. Mm-hmm.
right? So everyone watching this, as we show you this, don't shoot the messenger here, okay? Oh, I've said this over and over again. Just because it didn't capture on film doesn't mean it didn't happen. And so they start recording after that whole event occurred where the lights were coming down, okay? This is
Right.
what the witnesses told us, and they seem pretty credible. We have no reason to believe they embellished. They were
No.
seeing objects in 3 dimensions that were coming down in front of the road, and then they record this. Now, this is like straight out of almost like a sci-fi movie. Um, you remember they're out in the cornfields, right? And she pulls over and take a look at what they see.
That is crazy. Holy shit. What the hell is that?
That is awesome. Watch. Look at. Oh my gosh, that's so awesome. Look at. Come on, show us more. I want to see more. Come on. Show us the lights in the sky.
Oh my gosh. This, the first time that we saw these videos, this one and Ken's, it did give me kind of chills because it's like it wasn't like any other of these videos that people have been reporting. When you hear her testimony coupled with the fact that these things come in what I'm calling two waves, right? Two
Right.
phases or waves that go over the top. But from Kim's point of view, it's happening in front of them,
Mm-hmm.
and you see this kind of like a bunch of lights come together, and then they kind of zip away super fast, and
Mm-hmm.
then there's a number of seconds, 7 or 8 seconds, and a second wave comes. So what is Kim thinking at this point? Does she have I mean, did she throw the owl theory out the window?
Oh, immediately. Immediately. When they got out of the car and she started recording well, actually, after the second light hit in front of the car beams, like the actual light beams of the vehicle, her husband was like, "There's no way that was an owl. There's no way that that was that." And then they started of course, looking at the line of sight in the sky, and that's when they saw the other lights. And immediately owls went out the window. Um and to be completely honest, she just immediately thought, this is some type of phenomenon. What is this? I can't explain what this is, because she comes from a military background from her father. And then there, the local West Bend airport has a National Guard. They do drills with their helicopters. So they're familiar with a lot of the area's training, and they
Mhm.
don't do any other type of odd training with these types of any kind of odd, lights anywhere like that. You have just giant helicopters, which she said everyone in town is very familiar with. They're loud and they're obnoxious. And that's another thing, is this had no sound to it. So it's just really interesting.
And I think, to point out too that she's very instrumental in helping us look for possible explanations. She's been in this town for quite a while. I think she grew up there, right? Her dad
No,
was
she didn't grow up there, but she moved there. She's been there, she said, like over 19 years now. Yeah. So this
okay.
is the first time she's ever seen anything like this in the 19 years, which says a lot. That alone says a lot.
Now, West Bend is one of the largest cities there, and they have about 31,000 people or so, is the last I saw in the census. The other towns around there are only a couple thousand or less. Okay, as you get further out, and it's so rural that you're literally surrounded by cornfields and other crops and farms. That she kept making the point that if something happens around here, like an event, like you have
Right.
yeah, I don't know, some concert, amusement thing, whatever, people are going to know about it. They also don't have any big malls. I don't think there's any malls. They have
Strip
little
malls.
shopping centers, right? And
Mm-hmm.
and maybe, I don't think she said there is even like a big or a medium-sized car dealership.
Mm-mm.
There's
Nope.
nothing like that that would be projecting up into the sky. And people, if they were to see this, there would be talk. It's like, oh, John down the street, it was, doing stuff with his Christmas light display, for the year, because people are going to know what's going on in these towns.
Or even the local churches or the high schools or anything like that during the holidays, they're immediately going to know because, as she mentioned, there would be flyers in town, there would be buildups. Even if it's a county line over, a lot of the kids all know each other from different districts. And so they all kind of are aware of big special events. And growing up in the mountains
Mhm.
of Estes Park, we knew that Lions, which was down the mountain another 45 minutes to an hour, we knew what functions they were having. We all knew it was
Oh,
just
like the Lions Club. Okay.
no, no, no. The town was called Lyons, Colorado. It was a very
Oh, okay.
small
Where
town down the
okay.
mountain from Estes Park. And so, even from the Estes Park area, you knew what was happening in Lyons, Colorado. So, I understood what Kim was saying
Yeah.
as far as like the small town feel. It didn't matter if they were 45 or an hour away. You knew what function was happening because they would let
Mhm.
you know because they want the draw of the people to come to the event. So, that's kind of the situation here too as well, which
Okay.
there is no information.
So, Brittany, here comes the second part of the story. We need to tell people, right? Because if that wasn't enough,
Yeah.
um, I've been doing this a while, and one of my first things is like, well, how can we prove this isn't CGI, right?
Yeah.
We've got the raw videos, and we can analyze and test those. But if that wasn't enough, we have a second witness who does not know Kim or her husband. He also wants to go just by his first name, not because he's hiding. Both Ken and Kim, because of, I'll be honest, it's the stigma associated with, they don't want to be mixed in with their careers and what they do. And so they don't want to come out and give all their details to be hounded by people asking them all sorts of questions. They will be interviewed, and they're open to that with really anyone legitimate. But Ken was former law enforcement. So Ken lives about 4 or 5 miles to the northeast. We're going to throw up a map right here, and you can see the relative positions of where Kim had her sighting
Mm-hmm.
and then where Ken was. Now, Ken lives near the town of Fredonia. Now, Fredonia has about 2,000 people. And the way that these two even got connected was a guy named Chris. Now, Chris is where I first learned about this. He created a Facebook web page. He had seen something. He's about what, 45, 60 miles away?
He was just under 50 miles from them, yeah, from their location. Mhm.
Right. Now, Chris has been really instrumental, and he's been in contact with us every day for more than a week since we first started hearing about this. The guy is like interviewed, I don't know how many other witnesses, called
He's on
people
it.
up. He's talking to FAA, air traffic controllers and news meteorologists, and he's been completely changed by what he saw, and he's just so hungry to find an answer, right? So Chris had a sighting the next day, which we're not going to get into right now because we have a whole lot to cover, but he saw something so very similar that next night about 45 miles away. Okay.
Mhm.
So he brings us creates his Facebook page. Ken and Kim on their own find this page and post their sightings, not knowing that each of the other person had seen the exact same thing. So the video occurs as Ken is walking out to get his mail. The time is 10:50, exact time to the second, pretty much as we've matched this up, that Kim has her sighting.
Yeah.
Now, Ken lives alone. He's going down his driveway to the main country road. And it's pretty much a starless sky, he said, that was pretty overcast. Not too cold. I checked the weather report. It not too cold in Wisconsin means freezing. I mean, 32,
Yeah.
right? 32 degrees, but not horrible for how cold it can get up there. I know.
Yeah, no.
He's getting his mail, and he said that as he's looking at the sky, he sees what he describes as firefly lights, and they seem to be chasing each other. They seem to be playing tag. He said it was almost whimsical because they're kind of bouncing around and kind of doing little circles and bouncing around. And he watches them for maybe a minute or less, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, I have my phone in my pocket," which he doesn't normally take out to get the mail. So he takes out his phone, and what you're going to see as he starts to record is the same display of UAPs, but coming from behind him. Okay,
Mhm.
so again, he's standing pretty much in a cornfield. It's deadly silent, and he sees 2 waves of lights coming up over the top of him. And let's just play this, and then we'll talk about how it matches up to what Ken or Kim and her husband saw. Here you go.
Yeah.
Whoa. Okay. So that was not even with the image brightened, right? That is like we haven't touched the image there, and you see how these lights come streaking. Okay. So the first wave, I timed it. It passes over him in less than a second. You have
It's
those
crazy.
5 lights, right? The second wave comes over 7 to 8 seconds later. And so many things we need to unpack this. I want to do a deep dive a little bit later, but you and I were talking earlier, and the more we watch
Yeah.
this, there's more things we need to address.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Especially once we started really diving into the image alone, we started noticing a lot of things.
Yeah, I don't even know like where to begin. Let's do this side by side. Um,
Yeah.
we we created a couple side by sides. Now here's the first one. So as you can see here, Ken's video is on the right, and Kim's is on the left. Okay, now Kim's, as you play this and match it up, it's uncanny how the same lights doing the same thing, the same time elapsed between the 2 sightings matches up to the second. Okay, so there's no doubt they're looking at the same event. Now, what's kind of difficult to know though is where it's occurring, because it's ahead of Kim, but it starts behind Ken. Now, does that mean that's where they actually originated? Or they're just appearing there? We don't really know.
Right.
But let's take a look here at the side by side that you created.
Okay. So in this video, what I decided to do was basically inlay Ken's video on top of Kim's from their locations of the capture at the same time. And by doing so, I was able to match up the moment both of them captured them, viewing them at the same time, at the same minute. But by also doing this, it allowed us to have a different perspective from both point of views. So from here, we have Kim's, and we can see how it comes into frame with the first wave. And you can kind of see how it almost comes from one point, which is what something she had mentioned to me, where she said, imagine all of a sudden one sphere is there and then multiple appear. And that is kind of how it appears.
Well,
But if
I
you,
love her husband's commentary, by the way. He
oh,
seems like a really cool guy I'd want to hang out with.
yeah, they both. I honestly have just grown to love Kim. She's amazing. And they're hilarious with like the commentary in this video. It's just wonderful. And you can tell the genuine excitement that you can tell in their voice. And that's the other thing I love. If you do listen to the audio in this video, it's the genuine honesty that comes through the voice of excitement of what are we looking at? We've never seen this before. And I love that. That's why we're in this job.
Right.
Um,
So let's
but
play it, and then you comment on it here. Let's play this through. There's Ken's on the top and Kim's on the bottom.
Ken's on the top. So you can see that Ken's does
Oh,
come
Ken's on the
from
top.
over
Yep.
his shoulder. That's the part that still gets me. So the
Okay.
first, this one right there. The second wave, I know you and I, Ben, have gone over this with like the fine tooth comb. And it's that right there. So taking that light, all of a sudden
Uh-huh.
jumping in and joining into the pattern, right? Into the formation that you're witnessing. Now you can see it both in Kim's and in Ken's. You've got Kim's clear as day, very bright. You can see the lights really well formed, and you can see that one shooting out of nowhere from the left. And Ken, looking as though if he's a little closer to it, you can even get a better point of view perspective visually of watching that object shooting into frame and right into that whole formation that you're seeing unfold in front of your eyes.
Yep. So that's something I didn't even, quite address as we walk through what he was actually seeing. He says they look like gray orbish lights. He described them. They didn't seem to really change shape. I think as we slow this down, it's a little bit hard to know what is motion blur and what's not. But he
Right.
says this one he sees it slides into place almost like they were in formation. And then this one, this one, two, three, fourth, fifth light, it's like it has an empty space waiting for it and it slides over and then joins. Now, this second wave, I'll play it right from the beginning again. The first wave, like I said, is over in about a second. And then the second wave was like 5 times slower. I think it was actually over 5 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
So here's Ken's video, and this one we have brightened quite a bit so that we can see that cloud line. Now, something about the weather that night, I pulled off the weather report, we call it the METAR, from West Bend Airport, and this happens, they put out weather reports every hour. It's an automated system in most airports. And it said that I'll pull that on the screen here, the cloud ceiling was 6,500 feet. I also looked at what we call the Echo Top report, which is more graphical here. And you can see that, a little discrepancy. What it was showing by a satellite was that it may have been more like, 5,000 feet. But anyways, we're right in that same area, 5 to 6,500 feet, okay, with the cloud base. Now, it also happened that during that 1 hour, the cloud coverage went from about 75% to sometimes 100% cloud coverage. And there's different ways they measure that. We won't really get into it. Some of it's by sensors that are actually at the airport, and some are by, human observation. But here we have, as I scrub through this with a brightened image, you're going to see something very interesting. At the beginning of the video, the lights that first come over seem to be coming over his right shoulder, okay, coming from the right. You have 1, 2, probably 3, 4, 5. Or I can't tell if those are 2 lights that join or if it's, just 4 separate ones. But as soon as they take off through the horizon, we get this weird flash, almost like a lightning flash in the distance.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see how the whole image kind of brightens on the upper part of the screen. Now, there was no lightning there. It was freezing temperatures or slightly above. There was no sound. I don't think this is a weather phenomenon. But I mean, I guess it also could be maybe, I don't know, maybe some sort of a bug or something passed right in front of the camera and caused that pixelation to change. Kim doesn't pick it up on her camera, does she?
No. And so that's the other issue that I foresee with that is that, I'm sure that someone would want to throw out possibly dry lightning, right? That you see in the sky where it just pulses like that in the clouds.
Right.
But it would have happened again and again, and they would have known about it. And it also would have been reported through the meteorology. So any kind of report from the weather, and none of that. It wasn't even a stormy night or anything like that. It was just overcast, cold, and anyone who lives in those states know you don't have to have any kind of odd weather to have overcast, cold because it's just winter.
And it
Like,
was really weird too, because you pointed out even before that, there's a streak in the top left corner, and we don't
mm-hmm.
know if right here.
There it
and it
is.
streaks
Yeah.
across diagonally. Don't know again if that is another one of the UAPs related to this, or coincidentally, I don't know, some bug that's freezing its butt off right now, comes streaking by. It
It's
seems like it
really
might be part
weird.
of it.
It does give the feeling that it is a part of it because as soon as it flashes overhead with the trail of this coming in, as it shoots off, as soon it's you can see it clear as day to the left right there. If anybody's looking at the camera, you see that odd kind of discolored light
It's not
sphere.
white. It's not white
No.
either. It's in this, with the image brightened, we can't really trust the true colors at this point, but it looks reddish.
Yeah, it's definitely not. It's hard to explain what that could be. I'm not really sure. I won't rule out bug. I just don't know. I find it very odd timing that as the lights are literally coming overhead, this shoots across the screen as well.
Yep. Okay.
And
So
it does seem odd.
now they disappear, and I'll make the point here too that they don't all go out at once.
No.
They seem to fade and kind of go off together, and then what happens is they fade, fade, fade. After the last one seems to leave, there's another little flash. Oh, that's the flash. That's the flash here.
Mhm.
And as they seem to leave, a couple frames later,
Oh,
we
there it is.
we get this little guy here that pops up. Okay, like he
Yeah.
he he doesn't want to completely leave yet. So he's still here and then fades out. Okay? Then 7 point something seconds happens in
Boop.
between, and then all of a sudden we get the first frames of these lights. Now he believes they came up from behind him, but the same as in Kim's video, it almost looks like they just start right here.
Yeah, they just come on.
We just
Like,
noticed
ta-da!
that. I mean, so we're not even sure if these ones came from behind him, but maybe somewhere ahead of him they come on. And here comes our fifth light. Now, something that I want to point out about the fifth light, okay? And again, we're just speculating by what we're seeing here. It would be extremely hard to judge where this thing is, but I will say you can see how that fifth light, that seems to be joining a formation, is very sort of blurred and faded, and it looks like it's superimposed over the other ones. Okay, so a couple things on that. Let's suppose that this might be some sort of a projection, okay, a searchlight or some sort, and the person's on the ground. Well, the lights are coming from the ground. If you were to have a light such as this kind of swoop in and join, I would expect that if you're projecting from the same location, which would be the simple explanation, because why it would be so complex to have lights spread out over different farmlands and arrange
Mhm.
this and coordinate it at the same time. Very, very difficult. So if you're projecting from the same location, let's say within a couple feet of each other, this light that joins should look consistently like the light it's passing by. Make sense? It should probably be the same intensity, the same shape, because it's coming from the same angle, and yet it's faded and blurred and looks like it's almost in the foreground, like it has some three-dimensionality to it. Now, Ken had told us as well that he couldn't be certain, but he wasn't sure if these lights were coming down from the clouds above. He thought that was possible, but they almost looked as if they were within the clouds and then came down maybe just slightly below the cloud deck, so that they may have been sort of separated from the cloud deck, and that what we're seeing might actually be the light reflected off of these objects. And you're seeing light emanating and following the curvature of the clouds, because we do see that. I mean, I don't think we can argue
Mhm.
that you're not seeing those the lights are kind of following the bumps and the curvatures of the clouds, right?
Right. Mhm.
So is that
Well,
coming from the objects, or are they actually in the cloud?
Well, and that's the thing too, is Kim pointed that out when we spoke. Her and her husband being like literally there on the ground almost said exactly identically what Ken said, that it almost appeared as they were in the cloud, almost using the cloud as kind of the camouflage, using the clouds to travel through. And that's where the light was coming from. It wasn't ground up, it was actually sky down. And that also, that's why when the lights were coming from tree line down to where basically the roadway was and their beam of lights, that's where it shot up or shot down and shot back up. So she believed that they were coming from inside the clouds and then coming down.
Right. Okay, so
It's
I
just
think we're not even doing this
baffling.
justice because there's so many things to cover here. There's a couple more points. We wanted just to make this as an intro video for everybody to know what we're dealing with, know that this is a developing story. Keep saying that because it's important to know that we're going to get more information. Different leads are coming in, and we might have to refine, the theories that we're coming up with. But at this point, a couple other things that we see here is that when they fade out, if these were projections of some sort, we can see here, they kind of go out, one by one here, and then the final one there. They don't turn off as if you kind of pulled the plug to your searchlight. The LEDs can do that, right? They can go pretty much instantly on and off.
Yeah.
But what would cause them to fade? Well, maybe the cloud coverage, it doesn't really make sense. It has suddenly got really dense there because if it's a searchlight, it's still going to project onto the cloud,
Right.
right? So if you're going to turn them off, then you would kind of expect them just to zap on and off. And we do have, you can easily find examples of that online of lights that can do that. One other thing is, I think if these were some sort of a searchlight, I think they would be coming from two different locations. And why do I say that? Because the first one, as we look at the first wave, you can see I just call these like comet trails, okay, that are coming off the back of these things. They're pointing in a upwards, to the right direction coming off of them. And if the projection was in front, the strongest part is going to be kind of at the front part of it, and then it's going to kind of tail off towards the back in an elongated elliptical shape. Okay. Which, by the way, Ken made the point that these look like they're flying horizontally. They do. I mean,
Yeah,
which
they
is
do.
really, really weird, right? The whole time these are going through the clouds, look at this. They're very, very horizontal.
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
And as they go over distance, it's not like they're going from a perfect circle pattern, being over you and then elongating. They look to keep the same shape.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so where would they be projecting from then? That's one of the big problems here, is that on this wave, it looks like if you followed, I remember in art, back in the fourth grade art, we learned about vanishing points, right? Well,
Mm-hmm.
the vanishing point, if you were to draw a line here, places the origin, if these are truly being projected, somewhere down in here. Okay, if you
Right.
can see my cursor. But the second wave has them coming directly over or in front of Ken. And if you follow these fans, and you can see how they each take an angle here, it would place the projection somewhere in front, directly in front of him.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if I explained that clearly enough, what's going on in my head here. But to me, I feel like if this is a projection, it's going to be coming from two different vantage points. Does that make sense to you? Or am I just crazy?
Yeah. No, it does. It does.
And then one other note here is that we've looked at a lot of different searchlights. You wouldn't believe how many different companies we've looked at. Brittany has called several people, in fact, like the nation's leading experts in searchlights. And basically you have two, maybe three different types. The old carbon searchlights, carbon arc lights, I've used when we were doing the battle over Los Angeles case. Huge. Okay. These are like World War
Mm-hmm.
II era stuff. And they stopped making them, I think, just a couple decades ago, actually. They
Yeah.
move very slowly. The other type you have are LED or xenon bulbs, which can be programmed. And you have a computer, put in an AI software program and give it a pattern to follow, hit play. The computer drives them and they do their thing. The problem is those LEDs generally correct me if I'm wrong, Brittany, but the people you're talking to, like, they tell you that they're very highly kind of intense and focused,
Yes.
right?
Hmm.
But they don't have the range, right, of the other lights. Is that right?
Are we talking about the LEDs?
Yeah, LEDs or xenons.
Yeah, they were saying that even if you're let's just say far away like 10 miles, 15 miles, whatever, you're really not going to see any precise light that you're looking at. The closer you get, it's very as he put, the one gentleman I spoke to basically said it's almost like a needle line of how sharp and precise that line is that shoots straight up to the sky for you to see it. um and again, I also had shared these videos, and it's not the same as to what those LEDs look like or how they project. They're
Right.
just not the same at all. The sphere alone, when it hits the sky, is so intensely perfect, if
Uh-huh.
that's even a way to describe it. When it hits the sky, that it's undeniable what it is, and you ultimately see that beam. And even from a far distance, if you don't really see the beam, you kind of see the haze of what could be the beam,
That
but
makes
the
sense.
actual light on the sky is like so precise. You're like, "Oh, is that universal over there?" I mean, it's just that perfect. You just know what it is.
And that's been my experience as well with the LEDs, or the xenons. I can't remember which one we use in our experiment, but when you're up close, you can see the beam. And I even made the point the other day on Twitter that depending on the humidity or particles in the air, it's almost invisible in some cases. So
Mhm.
perfectly understandable that perhaps if this was a projection, that we wouldn't see the beams, except that this thing was seen for at least 8 miles in distance. So it required something that was pretty intense to maintain the consistency of the intensity, because you have 4 or 5 miles between Kim and Ken, and then probably at least the horizon here another 4 miles in front of Ken. Okay, so
Mhm.
I'm just guesstimating here, admittedly, but I'm guessing you have probably about 8 miles here, where these things are being seen without a beam, and yet they tend to kind of keep their intensity. So that's something to keep note of. And the other thing is the movement. So the old arc lights, right? The big carbon arc lights, like World War II era stuff, very, very slow. And I've worked with those before. I don't see how it's at all possible that these
Mhm.
are those, because you can put those on a motor and a servo kind of drives them and moves them slowly around, but you'd have to manually throw these huge several foot, wide diameter lights, manually, to get them to move like this. Not going to happen.
Exactly. Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So what we're left with, and the experts we're talking to who know every sort of light there is, this would have to be some sort of LED or xenon bulb. And the
Mhm.
problem there, of course, is that as we research, most of these are sets of like four lights that come on the back of a pickup truck, and they're driven by servos that can go. They can go in a pattern that is predictable, and they kind of rotate and go around. But to snap as fast as these things are going, my opinion here, from what we're learning so far, is you're going to have a much smaller light. It's almost like a theatrical light you'd use at a concert.
Right.
Is that what we're
Exactly.
learning?
Yeah, that's exactly correct. Yep. And it's not, it's, they're much smaller framed. They do not project this large of light on the sky either. It's a much smaller frame, and mostly they come in multiple, like multiples, not just like two or three. It's many.
So the diameter is a lot less, and they're not going
Yes.
to. This sort of thing is also not typical. The sliding into formation, not impossible,
Not impossible.
not
No.
impossible, but the
It
last
would be,
point. Oh, go ahead.
it would definitely be odd. That's all I'm going to say. It would be a definite odd pattern choice that someone would program to have it do, because why would you want your lights to look broken? Like, if that makes sense. If you were having a formation and then one shooting in really quick, cuz it almost looks broken. Like, that's not, that wouldn't be right with this type of technology, especially how advanced it's come.
Yeah, yeah. So we've talked about some of the problems. I think what the biggest thing that we're trying to wrap our head around right now as well is the location where these have been filmed
Yes.
We've already made the point that it's so very rural and that people should know what's going on. Well, we did some digging, and it's actually in these towns in the county, you have to have a permit to do this legally, to do advertising lights. And I'll
Hmm.
pull that up on the screen really quick. This is just an example in Fredonia. You have to apply for a permit, and it's good for 5 days to do searchlight advertising. Um, and you, Brittany, have done a lot of legwork. And what did you find out? You've called like what, 3 city halls now?
Yeah, so I went ahead and contacted West Bend, Fredonia, and Belgium in Wisconsin, which is basically in the northeast eastern range of where the lights would have been coming from. And I contacted what would be their town halls, their city halls, but they're called the villages of. And I just wanted to talk to an individual that's running those that would have access to see if anyone has applied for a permit to run any kind of searchlight advertising. And each one has told me no, no, we don't have anything like that. And that's not even, no one has ever done anything like that. We don't have anything like that, which is always, it cracks me up when they were just so adamant about that. For Donia, however, when I did talk to the individual there, and I will keep her name because I'm sure, I don't know if she wants everyone to know, but she had claimed that she had also seen a light, but she didn't see multiple. She only saw one, like one individual sphere like light shoot across the sky really fast. And again, that's in Fredonia. And that was from a representative at the village of Fredonia at the town hall there. And she said that they have no reports of anyone requesting any kind of permits for any kind of lighting like that or any kind of stuff for any holiday event. And they don't even have any really large holiday events going on like that. That would be like a light base to come see other than people's homes being decorated for Christmas. But she's interested about the lights. She saw one. And again, it's been, now you understand like that, like we said earlier, that's several miles apart as far as city to city goes.
Mm-hmm.
And the conversations are growing. People are seeing those lights and want to know what they are, or have seen that light those nights and want to know what they are.
Yeah, and what people don't realize too is we have a dozen or more different people highly invested in this right now. Everything from police officers like the sheriff's department, people asking other sheriff's departments if they have seen anything. They're very curious. The fire departments have been reaching out to other stations, and then we have airport manager right over at West Bend, who
Mm-hmm.
said, look, National Guard would be advising us if they were doing drills. They haven't, and they should be concerned as well, because if somebody is spotlighting up in the air and you have air traffic that may be trying to land there under, instrument IFR conditions, you don't want people spotlighting you and causing more problems. That's
Right.
why they have permits for these things. And yet nobody has any idea who might be doing it, if this were hoaxed or if this were some type of commercial advertisement, right?
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
So that brings me to my final point is, Brittany, if you were to have some sort of advertisement with searchlights that nobody knows about, like what are you advertising? You're in the
Out
middle of a
there.
cornfield.
Exactly. I was going to say out there, nothing. Come see the cows.
Don't laugh at the people there. I know you're not laughing at the people, but like
And I'm
even
laughing
they
at how you
laugh at
said
it.
that, but that's true. But
Yeah,
that's true. They have laughed at it with us because they're
they're
like, there's
laughing with us.
nothing. They are, because they're like, even Kim, we've talked about it and we're laughing because it's exciting, but it's also humorous
Yeah,
because she's like, we don't have anything out here to advertise to bring people to, not to that extent. Not
yeah.
to like, other than like, hey, our local church might be doing a really cool function. That's
Mhm.
advertising, but not to the point to like spend a lot of money to have advertising lights. Like we're
No,
not,
no,
they
no,
don't
and
have
like
a lot
a bunch
coming
of
there. It's not
teens getting
universal.
together, right? Teenagers spend thousands of dollars for some sort of a hoax, a light show. I guess it's possible, right?
It's
And
possible, or they found like some old military ones that they're like, hey, let's play with these things, but that's like really far fetched. I mean, that's
yeah,
far fetched. And I mean, and I will say, talking to some of the eyewitnesses, we've chuckled, we've laughed about it on the phone. I mean, even in these locations, the people I've spoken to between churches and park recreation, they've laughed about it. I'm like, I know it sounds
yeah,
really funny, but could it be possible? Like,
because we're
no,
we're on the
no.
verge of writing off the commercial light theory for several reasons, because like I said, you have to have a permit to do it
Yeah.
legally. If you don't, you're going to be shut down and fined. Again, it's been seen a couple times now. We'll get into that later videos and tell you other witnesses coming forward that have actually filmed some things, but they're only ever on for a couple of minutes or seconds,
Yep.
right?
At max.
And like at 5 a.m. or 10 p.m. for like 3 minutes and then they're off. What are you advertising and what are you trying to get people to do? Right? You're not
Exactly.
putting on a Black Friday sale, come to our car dealership if you only leave it on for a few seconds,
Right. That was
right?
the other point that we have talked about multiple times, especially with Kim. She was like, "Listen, it's only on for like we're talking like 5 to 7 minutes that we see these lights. That's it. That was the one time, 5 7 minutes max, and it's done. So if you're advertising to bring people to your
Yeah.
location, or it's a big football game, at one of the local high schools, those things are going to be playing the whole time as the game's going.
Well,
You're going to
look
see
what
them
you
for
put together
hours.
here. You put up this Google Earth image, a little flyover, and we can
Yeah.
see here. This is where Kim and her husband first saw that. We're going to head over to where Ken's sighting was, and you can see. This really explains to people, illustrates the fact that you are in your backyard is somebody's farm, okay, or
Yeah, it's all
somebody's ranch.
rural. Mm-hmm.
And again, there's no commercial even restaurants or
Nope.
things in this part of the county that would be advertising something. So I think that really makes the point here that I'm kind of almost just want to write off that it's a commercial light display, but we still have that possibility that it could be some sort of hoax. And so
Yes.
this is where we're really asking for people's help, okay? Because we want to identify these lights. There's got to be other people on the ground here who might see them and can get closer to them and try to find the source. If this is a natural explanation or it's human made and that somebody is doing this, it shouldn't be that hard for us to identify. The thing I want though is I want a name. Okay? I
Yeah,
want
I
an
agree.
exact, it's this car dealership. They were testing out lights that they're going to use later. It was,
Mhm.
Johnny down the street who got bored and spent, some money to buy some commercial lights on Amazon. And he thinks it's funny. And this is what Johnny's doing, right?
Yeah.
It's not enough in this case to just say it must be spotlights.
Yeah, I
Because
agree.
of all the things that we've mentioned so far, there are some problems, some big problems with that and how they're moving, the fact that they're seeing them come down from the clouds in front of them and everything else.
Yep. But again, also, we're not basing this strictly just on the video. I mean, we're going ground. We're going ground level to identify all of the every piece of the puzzle has to be looked at, and we've done that now multiple times. And talking to the eyewitnesses in the locations, 2 different locations, and also all the venues to learn a little bit more about that community. And it's a small town feel, and they would know. And so now knowing that and talking to them, it's becoming aware, and it's also bringing awareness to them to say, well, gosh, what is it? I want to look into it as well. And that's how we're getting the help. And the help has been just so wonderful because the
Yeah.
boots on the ground is how you get the work done. It's just been great.
All right. Well, in closing, I wanted to thank Chris for all he's done, putting up the Facebook page and getting these witnesses to come together. I also want to thank, of course, Ken, Kim, and those witnesses who have come forward hesitantly, okay, because there is this stigma attached to it, but there's nothing to be embarrassed about with this. There really is
No.
not. We're looking for answers. They want answers. I have to say that they're committed, like I said at the beginning, they're committed to knowing the truth wherever the facts take them,
Yeah.
right? So if you can help us in finding out what exact, light, if this is a human-made, searchlight, what model are we talking about? Who's doing it? Where is it coming from? Then we can put this to rest.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I have to say at this point, just something strange is going on in Wisconsin.
Yes. It is something very strange going on in Wisconsin. It makes me, it's so bizarre, but it's yeah. Who are they gonna call?
Who are they going to
Us.
call? Us, I guess.
Us.
You can pay me in cheese curds. I know that's stereotypical, but Wisconsin, every time I go there, I have to have deep fried cheese curds.
Oh, that sounds
I'm
amazing.
so hungry right now.
Oh my God. Maybe we're gonna have to go. Maybe we're just gonna have to play up and see it for ourselves. That just may have to be the end result here.
All right, everybody, stay tuned. Hopefully you hear from us, before, shortly after Christmas. We're, a lot of people busy, but we'll try our best to give you updates as they come. Thanks so much.